Welcome to Raaonline. Today we will discuss about a joint, the most important joint of our body, that is hip joint. So competency for today's topic will be, the first competency is describe and demonstrate the type, articular surfaces, capsule, synovial membrane, ligaments, relations, movements and muscles producing movements, blood and nerve supply, bursa around the hip joint. And the second competency will be describe the anatomical basis of complications of fracture of neck of femur. And the third competency will be describe the dislocation of hip joint. So we will start with the clinical case study. A 75-year-old woman could not stand and move her right leg after a minor fall in bathroom. On examination, it was found that her right lower limb was shortened and held in a characteristically laterally rotated position. So the X-ray revealed subcapital intracapsular fracture of femur. So this is a clinical case study and we have questions regarding this clinical case study. The first question is, what are the types of fracture of neck of femur? Give the anatomical basis for lateral rotation and shortening of a limb. And what are the complications of this type of fracture? And what is the clinical implication of neck shaft angle? So these are all the questions you are going to answer at the end of this class. So we are moving on to the topic proper. So this hip joint is otherwise known as coxal joint. So the hip joint produces all the movements which are essential for locomotion, that is for walking. And this joint is also important in weight transmission from vertebral column, that is axial skeleton, to the appendicular skeleton, that is the lower limb, which occurs through this joint. So weight transmission is a other most important characteristic of this joint. So this hip joint plays important role in mobility and as well as stability of our body. So now coming to, for any joint, we have to know what is the type and variety of the joint. So this hip joint, as I told, it is an important connecting link between pelvic girdle and lower limb. So this type of the joint, hip joint will be, it is a synovial type of joint and ball and socket variety. And you all know we have the same ball and socket variety of synovial joint in upper limb, and that is shoulder joint. So this hip joint is considered as one of the largest ball and socket joint of the body. And it is a multi-axial joint. So movement occurs in multiple axes. So we are going to discuss about hip joint under the following headings. For any joint, we will usually discuss under these headings. Like first will be the articular surfaces, or otherwise known as bones forming the joint. And the second thing will be, for any joint, the ligaments of the joint. And then we will discuss about relations, bursas related to hip joint, movement, what are the movements possible at hip joint, which muscles producing it, and what is the arterial supply, nerve supply, and finally what is the clinical implication, applied anatomy of hip joint. So first we are discussing the articular surfaces, bones forming the hip joint. So usually we know there will be two bones articulating to form a joint. So here the proximal bone will be acetabulum. This is the acetabulum of hip bone, and the distal bone will be, this is the head of femur. So the articular surfaces are acetabulum of hip bone and the head of femur. Now discussing in detail about these articular surfaces, first we will discuss about the acetabulum of the hip bone. So here you can see the acetabulum, which is a circular structure, or it is a hollow cup. This is known as acetabulum because it is, the shape of this acetabulum looks like a vinegar cup, a shallow cup. Okay. So here this acetabulum has different parts. So it is not wholly articular. So the articular portion will be only the lunate surface, which we can see in the bone also. I will show in the bone. So just here you can look for this lunate surface, and in the center we have the acetabular fossa, and then we have acetabular notch. So these are all the parts of acetabulum, and the distal articular surface will be femoral head. And this femoral head is forming more than half of a spear, and it faces upwards, forwards and medially. Okay, and remember, wherever we have articular surfaces, it will be covered by a cartilage. That's why here you can see the blue color structure, which are the articular cartilages covering the articular surfaces. Now we are going to show the articular surfaces, the lunate articular surface of the acetabulum and head of femur. Coming to the ligaments, so we have, for any joint, the first ligament will be articular capsule. And this capsule will be lined internally by synovial membrane. So this articular capsule and synovial membrane is common for any synovial joint. And so we have the special ligaments, the acetabular labrum, which is actually a cartilage which will be attached to the acetabular margin. So that is the acetabular labrum. And we have transverse acetabular ligament and round ligament of head of femur, and this is otherwise known as ligament of teres femoris. Another ligament is iliofemoral ligament of Bigelow, and we have pubofemoral ligament, ischiofemoral ligament. So we will see all these ligaments one by one. So first we will see about the articular capsule. Again, I will show the attachment of capsule in the bone also. Here you can just have a look. So capsule will be attached proximally and distally. So proximally it should be attached to the hip bone, and distally it should be attached to the femur. So proximally it is attached to the margin. See here, we have acetabular. This is a section, somewhat the sagittal section of hip joint. So you can see the acetabular labrum here. So this capsule is attached above the acetabular labrum into the hip bone. So it makes this acetabular labrum as an intracapsular structure. So proximally it is attached all around the acetabular margin, just above the acetabular margin. And below